Hello everyone, this is especially to my next year batch students. So I'm sure you must have done with the first internal and you started hematology. Halfway through the hematology, you must have felt that I have forgotten everything what I did read in general pathology. You have spent countless number of hours in reading it, revising it, making notes, but still there's a lack in it. I've forgotten that. So how do I revise it? The best way of revision is to solve questions and revise it. Rather than going reading the entire thing once again, let's do one thing. I'm going to start a series where I'll discuss few questions from Robbins based super book of Robbins review book. Let's understand the question, solve the question, go with the MCQ. So two things are solved. One, you will definitely make sure it will reignite all the lost spirits and lost concepts in general pathology. Second, you'll have the ability to solve scenario-based questions and you'll make sure if it's a NEET or next exam or INICT exam, you'll definitely clear that, right? If you're ready for the game, as usual, put on a big smile and let's start. So let's look at this question, first question. A 43-year-old person, right? Sorry, 53-year-old person came for routine checkup to a physician. On examination, she has a blood pressure of 150/95. If her hypertension remains untreated for years, which of the following cellular alteration would be seen in a myocardium? It's simple. What we have read in our classes and the concepts is more and more and more pressure you have, the heart has to pump against the more pressure. So the cardiac muscle, based on the Frank-Stahl interaction and everything, will adapt by producing or increasing the size of the muscle. Since cardiac muscle is kind of a terminally differentiated cell, they will not be able to produce hyperplasia. They will produce only cardiac hypertrophy. Actually, if you deep down into a conceptual learning what we did, this will end up in having a concentric cardiac hypertrophy, because we have two types of cardiac hypertrophy. One is due to pressure overload, which will be equidistant throughout the entire bit of myocardium. Other is volume overload. So this is due to increase in pressure or hypertension. If it's in volume overload, it becomes like the apex will be more involved because all the volume will get stagnant here. In case of a volume overload or an aortic regurgitation, everything, you will have an eccentric cardiac hypertrophy, right? These are two things which you did read in the previous concept, just to revise them. Classical case of cardiac hypertrophy, secondary to hypertension. That's it. And you will have more pink color in the muscle because of more protein production, and that's how you look in the, it looks in the microscope, right? Let's go to the next guy. So here, let's lift this guy. Okay, perfect. A 22-year-old woman, I hope it's visible, right, becomes pregnant. Fetal ultrasound shows 13 weeks of gestation. Her uterus measures 7 into 4 into 3 centimeter. At the delivery of the same baby, the uterus was 34 centimeter. Which of the following processes has contributed to the increase in the size, increase in the uterine size? So it's very classical here. The uterus has increased in size to accommodate the growing fetus. That's all, right? That's it. That's obviously an adaptation here. If you look at the possibilities here, endocrine glandular hyperplasia has nothing to do with uterine size. It's not an endocrine hyperplasia, right? Endometrial. Endometrial hyperplasia, you will see them in case of an excess of estrogen. By default, this is progesterone excess in case of a pregnancy. Myometrial fibroblastic proliferation, let's put a dot here. Endometrial stromal hypertrophy, definitely no. I will not have stroma. Stroma or endometrium is not going to be involved here. Here it's the myometrium, which becomes thicker and to accommodate the ever-growing fetus, right? Vascular endothelial hyperplasia, no. So it's about the myometrium. So I have two options here. If myometrial fibroblast, option B is the right answer, the myometrium becomes fibrotic. Fibroblast will produce more and more collagen. If it becomes fibrotic, it will not expand. It's like a scar tissue, right? So this is the wrong answer. The only plausible and right answer is smooth muscle hypertrophy, myometrial smooth muscle hypertrophy. Here, I want you to remember a very old repeat question in the NEET PG exam. Smooth muscle is something which can undergo both hyperplasia as well as hypertrophy, though hypertrophy is predominantly important for me, right? This can undergo both hyperplasia as well as hypertrophy. Do remember them, right? So I want you to remember that. So if it all comes in the any one-liner, you should be able to answer that as well, fine? So it's a classical case of an post-pregnancy, uterus becoming increased size, option D is the right answer. The next one, we'll read half here, rest of it's there. A 20-year-old woman breastfeeds an infant. On her examination, the breasts are slightly increased in size. Okay, let's go to it. The milk can be, let's go. Okay, can be expressed from both the nipples. Fine. So, which of the following process has occurred in her breast during pregnancy which enables her to breastfeed the infant? The simple question, if I have to put in a single word, what is the cellular adaptation happens in the breast of a lactating mother? That's all. As simple as that, right? Which is going to produce obviously milk secretion. Ductal metaplasia? No, it's not an abnormal thing. It's not a change in epithelium, nothing. It has some modification. It's not a ductal metaplasia, definitely not dysplasia, Definitely no. There's no leptin component here. Milk is being ejected. Milk is being produced more by the epithelial linings of the duct in response to the prolactin and the other hormones, right? It is lobular hyperplasia. Stromal hypertrophy also not. The lobular hyperplasia automatically secondary to the prolactin and the other hormones is going to increase the milk secretion in this women in response to lactation, right? So secondary to hormonal influence of a lactating mother, the increase in breast size is due to lobular hyperplasia, which is the primary reason for increase in the milk production. Because the question is directly related to that, right? Which of the following process enables her to breastfeed the infant? So obviously the answer is lobular hyperplasia, which happens in the microscopy. Fine. Okay. Next question. Let's lift this up a little bit so that it's easy for you guys to see. Okay. Perfect. Right. Let's start. A 16-year-old boy sustained a blunt trauma to the abdomen when he stuck in a bridge abutment at high speed, some road traffic accident. Peritoneal lavage shows hemoperitoneum at the laparotomy. A small portion of the left lobe of the injured liver is removed. Okay. 2 months later, you have seen that liver is almost regained in size, right? That's the beauty of liver. Liver can come back from the ashes. It's like a phoenix bird. Even if one of the half of the liver is removed, the rest half of the liver can regain its size. The question is simple. Which of the following explains the regrowth of the liver? Right? It's simple. Apoptosis will not regrow. It's going to die. Right? Dysplasia, it's not abnormal. It's an adaptive response. Dysplasia can also increase size, but it's an abnormal thing. Not an hydropic change, not a steatosis. The answer is hyperplasia. Liver has an absolute tendency to undergo hyperplasia. This comes in a compensatory hyperplasia. After you cut, it compensates and will definitely compensate that. This also, I can lead one more thing to it. It's because of a factor called as scatter factor. Scatter factor is also called as an hepatocyte growth factor. That is the one which is responsible for the tremendous hyperplasia of the liver, and it is coded by a gene, proto-oncogene called as MET proto-oncogene. We'll read them when we come to renal pathology sometimes on the road, right? Okay. Let's go with one more, or this is enough? Let's go with one more. Let's complete 5. Okay, perfect. A 75-year-old man had a difficulty of urination and hesitancy in the increased frequency for the past 5 years. Okay. Digital rectal examination shows prostate gland is palpable and enlarged twice the normal size. There's some abnormality in the prostate. 71-year-old, I think of a pathological abnormality. A transurethral resection of prostate is done. Prostate chips has been obtained. Don't worry, nothing. Prostate chips means tiny removal of prostate via a procedure of transurethral resection of prostate. I cannot entirely take the prostate from the urethra, so to cut them into tiny bits, those are called as prostate chips. Fine. Okay, that is nodules of glands and intervening stroma. Fine. So the microscopy shows nodules of glands with intervening stroma. What is the pathological process that has occurred in the prostate? Right? It's a simple diagnosis of BPH. It's always a confusion whether it's a hypertrophy or hyperplasia. It is an abnormality. It is not a hypertrophy. It is undoubtedly a hyperplasia of prostate, right? It's a benign prostatic hyperplasia where the glands as well as stroma increase in amount. As on date, the terminology which we are much comfortable with in the pathological circulars, we call them nodular prostatic or a benign prostatic tissue. Why? To break the head between hyperplasia and hypertrophy. We as of now report as benign prostatic tissue, but what happens in microscopy is undoubtedly hyperplasia. That's what happens here, right? Perfect. So we have seen 5 important questions in the concepts of hyperplasia and hypertrophy. I think this tiny video will be helpful for you to reignite the lost concepts of general pathology. We'll do this till we reach systemic pathology. By the time, I'm sure that you will never forget pathology ever again, right? See you soon. Till then, bye-bye from Dr. Anjit. Bye-bye.